The loudest rumor gaining traction was the idea that money wasn't just mismanaged, it was allegedly redirected. The story being circulated is that there were business decisions made quietly. Contracts showed up before anyone calls the FBI, the lawyers, or the group chat Andes. Let's be very clear. This is a satirical, rumor-fueled, internet investigation-style commentary based on what the streets of social media are screaming, allegedly, supposedly, according to sources who may or may not exist. Got it? Good, now let's begin, because explain this to me. How does Towanda Braxton go from minding her business to suddenly being the main character in an FBI-flavored rumor storm? Why is her name trending next to words like case, files, and dark turn? And why does Tamar Braxton's name keep popping up like a plot twist nobody asked for, but everyone's watching? The blogs are whispering, the comments are screaming, and TikTok detectives with ring lights and zero credentials are suddenly acting like federal analysts. Is this a setup? A betrayal? Or just another day in the Braxton cinematic universe? Because allegedly, and we're saying allegedly with a megaphone, something shifted. Something leaked. Something made people say, wait, this doesn't add up, so buckle up. Because if even half of what the internet is hinting at is true or fake true, then this story didn't just take a dark turn. It drove straight into chaos. And trust me, you're gonna want to hear. This the moment Towanda Braxton's name started floating through comment sections, alongside words like files, federal, and behind the scenes. The internet did what it always does best. It panicked, exaggerated, and then turned speculation into a full-blown cinematic universe, allegedly, supposedly, according to people who swear they know someone who knows someone. And that's exactly where this story begins. Because nothing about this situation feels random anymore. For years, Towanda was seen as the quieter Braxton sister, the one operating just outside the loud chaos, the background strategist, the calm presence. But as social media detectives are now claiming, that quietness wasn't innocence, it was insulation. Or, so the rumors say. What makes this moment explode isn't just Towanda's name trending, it's the timing. The whispers didn't start in a vacuum. They came right after a series of eyebrow-raising moments that fans had been ignoring for years. Old interviews suddenly resurfaced. Clips that once felt harmless now look coded, as the internet loves to say. People are replaying scenes from Braxton family values like they're reviewing security footage, pausing, zooming, and asking questions nobody cared about before. Why did Towanda always deflect when money came up? Why did she go silent whenever contracts were mentioned? And why did certain family arguments end the moment she walked into the room? According to anonymous online threads, this alleged case didn't come from nowhere. The story being pushed is that there were long-standing financial disputes, quiet disagreements over management decisions, and supposed connections that were never meant to be public. Again, allegedly. The narrative now is that Towanda wasn't just participating in the family business. She was allegedly managing narratives, smoothing conflicts, and keeping certain doors closed. And when doors stay closed too long, people start knocking harder. Enter the FBI rumor. Not charges, not arrests, just that dangerous word, interest. Internet interest first, then suddenly federal interest. If you believe the screenshots circulating with zero context and maximum confidence. One viral post claimed that documents exist. Another said, you don't get this quiet unless lawyers are involved. Are these facts? No. Are they being treated like facts? Absolutely. And once that snowball starts rolling, it doesn't care who it hits. But what truly poured gasoline on this already messy situation was Tamar Braxton's name getting dragged into the conversation yet again. And because every time there's a Braxton controversy, Tamar somehow ends up standing in the middle of it, whether she asked for it or not. This time, people are claiming she didn't just witness things, she allegedly reacted to them in a way that raised questions. Fans noticed unfollows, subtle shade, a sudden silence where commentary usually lives. And in internet culture, silence is never neutral. Silence means something happened. According to so-called insiders, the relationship between Towanda and Tamar has been tense for a long time. But this moment allegedly cracked whatever was left unbroken. The story being sold online is that Tamar knew things, or at least knew enough to distance herself. Did she betray Towanda? Did she protect herself? Or did she simply step away before the mess got louder? No one actually knows, but that hasn't stopped thousands of people from deciding their own version of the truth. What keeps fueling this fire is the idea that this isn't just family drama anymore. It's bigger than that. That's the phrase being repeated everywhere. Bigger than feelings. Bigger than contracts. Bigger than reality TV. The implication is that there are systems involved, money trails involved, and powerful people who don't like their names in comment sections. And whenever the internet senses power, it immediately assumes corruption. Because in the age of viral exposes, everyone is guilty until proven innocent, and sometimes, even after that, people are now connecting dots that may not even exist. A cancelled appearance here, a delayed project there, a sudden change in representation. All of it is being stitched together into one dramatic theory that suggests Towanda's world didn't just wobble, it shifted. And while no official source has confirmed anything, the lack of confirmation is being treated as confirmation itself. That's how fast narratives move now. Truth doesn't get time to breathe. Meanwhile, Tamar's past controversies are being dragged back into the spotlight as context. Her history of speaking out, clashing publicly, and calling people out is now being reframed as warnings she tried to give. Old tweets are being reinterpreted like prophecy. Statements that once sounded emotional are now being labeled strategic. Whether that's fair or not doesn't seem to matter anymore. The internet has decided that Tamar is either the whistleblower who stayed quiet too long or the sister who stepped away just in time. There is no in-between in viral storytelling. And Towanda? In this version of the story, she's being cast as the mystery, not the loud villain, not the obvious victim, but the unknown variable, the one people don't fully understand, which makes her the easiest target. Because mystery invites projection, and projection turns into accusation. Every calm move she makes now is being described as calculated. Every moment of silence is being framed as legal advice. And every public smile is being called suspicious. As this narrative keeps evolving, what's wild is how fast public opinion is shifting without a single confirmed fact. One minute, people are defending Towanda, saying this is another case of internet overreach. The next minute, those same people are asking, but what if there's more? That's the power of suggestion. You don't need proof when you have doubt. And doubt is the most viral currency online. And just when it feels like the story can't get any louder, that's when part 2 of the speculation begins. Because once people believe there's smoke, they start inventing the fire. And that's exactly where this story keeps going, right into the next layer of alleged leaks, reactions, and consequences that people swear are coming next. Because according to the internet, this situation is far from over, and what's about to surface next is what really has everyone holding their breath. And once people believe there's smoke, they don't just look for fire, they start naming who brought the matches, who paid for the gasoline, and who conveniently left the room before anything caught on camera. That's when the so-called investigative phase of the internet kicked in. And suddenly everyone became an expert in reading between lines that may not even exist, according to posts that appeared almost overnight. Anonymous users began claiming they had seen documents, heard conversations, or connected timelines that allegedly point to something much bigger than a simple family disagreement. Again, none of this came from any official source. No statements, no confirmations, just confident sentences typed in bold, followed by phrases like, "Do your research and this will all make sense soon," and somehow. That was enough for thousands of people to believe a hidden structure was finally being exposed. IGN without full transparency, and financial arrangements that benefited some while keeping others in the dark. In internet logic, quiet equals guilty, and complexity equals cover-up. Screenshots of old business announcements were reposted with new captions suggesting they were fronts for something else. Normal industry moves were suddenly being described as strategic escapes. Then came the luxury angle, because no online scandal is complete without exaggerated spending stories. Users started listing supposed purchases, vacations, and lifestyle upgrades, comparing timelines, and saying things like, "Does this add up?" They spoke about lavish trips, expensive renovations, and high-end connections as if they were evidence instead of assumptions. In reality, none of it proved anything, but perception is powerful. Once people decide someone's living too well, they start demanding explanations no one actually owes them. Imaginary insiders quickly joined the conversation. Quotes began circulating from sources close to the situation, claiming that tensions had been building for years behind closed doors. One viral thread claimed that meetings ended abruptly whenever certain topics came up. Another alleged that phone calls were recorded just in case. Are these claims real? There's no proof. But they were written with such confidence that readers didn't even stop to ask who these sources were or why they suddenly felt safe speaking now. Public reaction followed the usual pattern: shock, judgment, entertainment. Comment sections turned into courtrooms. People picked sides based on vibes, past behavior, and who they personally liked more on television. Some defended Towanda fiercely, saying she's always been the most stable and responsible, so the rumors must be nonsense. Others argue that stability is exactly how people hide things. It didn't matter that both arguments canceled each other out. What mattered was engagement. Tamar's role in all of this continued to grow, not because she said anything, but because she didn't. Her silence became the loudest sound in the room. Fans dissected her social media activity like it was Morse code. A post about self-protection was interpreted as shade. A motivational quote was read as a warning. Even unrelated interviews were clipped and reframed as indirect commentary on the situation. In this narrative, Tamar wasn't just a sister anymore. She was a potential witness, an alleged insider, or depending on who you ask, someone who saw the storm coming and stepped aside. Some went as far as claiming Tamar had been exposing things for years, just not directly. Old arguments were rebranded as moral stands. Emotional outbursts were now being called strategic breakdowns caused by knowing too much for too long. It's a convenient rewrite of history, but it fits perfectly into the storyline people want to believe. When the past is edited through the lens of the present, everything starts to look intentional. Meanwhile, the FBI rumor evolved into something even more dramatic. It was no longer just interest. People started saying words like inquiry, review, and background checks, all without a shred of evidence. The more official the language sounded, the more believable it became. Someone even claimed that things are being handled quietly to avoid public panic, which is exactly the kind of sentence that makes people panic. There's something about the idea of secrecy that makes speculation feel justified. What's fascinating is how quickly entertainment blurred into accusation. Viewers who once watched this family for laughs and real audibility were now watching like they were following a true crime series. Each new rumor was treated as an episode. Each silence was a cliffhanger, and Towanda, whether she liked it or not, was now the central figure in a story she never agreed to star in. At the same time, pushback started forming. Some voices called out the absurdity of it all, reminding people that rumors are not facts and silence is not guilt. They pointed out how dangerous it is to turn speculation into conviction, especially when real people are involved. But those comments were often drowned out by louder, more dramatic takes. Calm doesn't go viral, accusations do. As days passed, the narrative kept expanding instead of clarifying. New details appeared that contradicted earlier ones, but instead of raising red flags, they were woven into the story as complexity. Confusion was treated like depth, and the more tangled it got, the more people felt certain there had to be something there. After all, why would so many people be talking if it wasn't real? That's the trap of mass belief. Towanda's perceived calm during this period only added fuel. Every public appearance was analyzed frame by frame. Her tone was called rehearsed. Her posture was described as defensive. Even when she did nothing, people filled in the blanks for her. In the court of public opinion, neutrality is suspicious and restraint is strategic. By now, the situation had transformed from a rumor into a full-scale online phenomenon. Blogs were hinting without saying anything directly. Content creators were monetizing theories, reaction videos multiplied, and through it all, the line between satire, speculation, and accusation completely disappeared. And just when it seemed like the story couldn't possibly escalate further without actual evidence, that's when people started whispering about consequences, about what might happen next, about careers, reputations, and financial fallout, because in the internet's version of justice, every rumor must eventually end in punishment, and that expectation is exactly what pushes the story into its most dramatic phase yet. It stops caring whether those consequences are real, legal, or even possible. At that point, the story shifts from what might be happening to what should happen. And that's when speculation turns into expectation. People weren't just asking questions anymore. They were assigning outcomes. Careers were being written off in comment sections. Futures were being rewritten by strangers with Wi-Fi and opinions. The loudest prediction floating around was that this situation would eventually force action. What kind of action? No one could say clearly. Some claimed there would be audits. Others whispered about internal reviews, quiet legal consultations, and sudden meetings that happened behind closed doors with very expensive lawyers present. Again, none of this was confirmed, but the idea that something must be happening privately became more believable than the idea that nothing was happening at all. In online culture, still water is never calm, it's hiding something. Financial fallout became the next obsession. Users began speculating about frozen accounts, delayed payments, and deals being put on pause. Any postponed project was immediately linked back to the rumors, even if there was no connection at all. Normal industry delays were framed as damage control. The phrase "waiting for things to blow over" started popping up everywhere, as if it were an official strategy rather than a guess repeated enough times to feel real. Towanda's professional relationships were dissected next. Every collaborator suddenly became a potential witness in the court of public opinion. People asked why certain partnerships seemed quieter than usual, ignoring the fact that silence is the default state for most business dealings. In the narrative being pushed, however, quiet meant distance, and distance meant guilt by association was being actively avoided. It didn't matter that this interpretation had no evidence. It fit the story, and that was enough. The idea of reputational damage loomed larger than anything else, even without charges, investigations, or confirmations. The mere presence of a rumor can change how someone is viewed. Fans acknowledged this openly. They said things like, "Even if none of this is true, it's still bad." That sentence alone shows how powerful perception has become. Truth was no longer the standard. Impact was. Tamar's position in all of this became even more complicated as people began projecting future scenarios onto her as well. Some claimed she would eventually break her silence in a dramatic interview. Others insisted she would never say a word, choosing self-preservation over family loyalty in both cases. The assumption was the same, that she knew something significant. The possibility that she might simply be uninvolved didn't fit the story, so it was dismissed. There were even theories about a potential public split, a permanent fracture that would finally end the illusion of unity people once associated with the family. Commenters spoke about no coming back from this as if the damage had already been done. It didn't matter that the conflict existed mostly online. Once something feels real to enough people, it becomes emotionally real, and emotional reality has consequences of its own. What's striking is how the language shifted over time. Early on, everything was maybe and what if. Now it was when and after the fallout, after the exposure. After the truth comes out, the certainty grew even as the evidence remained non-existent. That's the paradox of viral controversy. Confidence increases while information stays the same. Some observers pointed out how dangerous this cycle can be. Especially for public figures who live under constant scrutiny, they warn that narratives like this can spiral into something uncontrollable, where correction becomes impossible because the story has already become entertainment. But those voices were often overshadowed by louder ones demanding accountability for things that hadn't been proven to exist. Towanda's silence continued to be interpreted as strategy rather than choice. People claimed she was waiting it out, that responding would only legitimize the rumors. Others said the silence was proof she was being advised not to speak. Both interpretations contradict each other, but both accuse intent. There was no version of quiet that allowed for innocence. As the weeks went on, fatigue started to set in for some viewers, but curiosity kept them watching. The story had no resolution, yet people stayed invested because they expected one. The internet doesn't like open endings. It wants closure, preferably dramatic. And if reality doesn't provide that closure, speculation will dot at the same time. New distractions emerged, as they always do. Another celebrity controversy, another viral scandal. Attention began to split, but the Towanda narrative didn't disappear. It lingered in the background, ready to resurface the moment anything remotely connected appeared. That's how these stories survive. They don't need constant fuel, just occasional sparks. What this entire situation ultimately revealed wasn't a confirmed scandal, but a pattern of how quickly speculation becomes belief, how easily entertainment turns into accusation, and how public figures can become characters in stories they never consented to tell. In this case, the rumored FBI angle, the alleged betrayal, and the imagined fallout combined into a single narrative that felt real enough to consume. Even without proof, whether anything ever comes of it remains unknown. There may be no investigation, no exposure, no dramatic ending at all, but the impact of the rumor has already done its work. Perceptions have shifted, questions have been planted, and once planted, they don't simply disappear. The internet will eventually move on, as it always does. But traces of this story will remain, resurfacing every time Towanda's name trends, every time Tamar speaks, every time the family appears together or doesn't. The speculation has become part of the backdrop now, a shadow that follows regardless of truth. And that's the real dark turn here. Not the rumors themselves, but how easily they took shape, how confidently they spread, and how quickly a narrative can be built from fragments, assumptions, and silence. Because in the end, the most powerful force in this entire situation wasn't evidence. It was imagination, and once imagination takes over, reality has a hard time catching up. And now the question goes straight to you. Because stories like this don't live or die in courtrooms, they live in conversations. Do you think this is just another internet spiral where rumors ran faster than facts? Or do you believe there's more beneath the surface that people aren't ready to talk about yet? Is Towanda being unfairly pulled into a narrative she never asked for? Or is silence in moments like this really saying something louder than words? And where does Tamar fit into all of this in your eyes? Calculated distance or simple self-preservation? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because the comments section is where the real debate happens. I want to know which parts made you raise an eyebrow, and which parts you think are pure internet fiction. If you've been watching this unfold from the sidelines, now's the time to speak up. If you're here for deep dives, viral rumors, and unapologetic breakdowns of the stories everyone's whispering about, but nobody's explaining. Make sure you like this video so it reaches more people who love questioning the narrative. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because if this story shifts again, you already know we'll be right here breaking down the next twist, the next rumor, and the next so-called truth the internet swears just dropped.